Hey, good evening everybody. Tonight I'm going to show you how to make marzipan. This is also known as almond paste and is a common ingredient in a lot of Christmas recipes, and usually it's found at most grocery stores. I'm working on a couple of recipes and I needed some, and I went down and the stuff they had, first they couldn't find it, and then when they did find it, I found it really expensive and it was expired to boot. So you know me, I decided to come home and make my own. And it's surprisingly simple if you have the ingredients. Now, I'm using ground almonds for this. You can use whole blanched almonds and then grind them up, but honestly, if you can buy the ground ones, it saves yourself a lot of time. Here's the ingredient list. So I got two mixing bowls for this, one to mix the dry ingredients and one to make the paste in. So first thing you should do is measure up your icing sugar, or confectioner's sugar as it's called in some parts of the world, and the almonds in one bowl, and then add the salt. Icing sugar is always a bit dicey because you don't want to tamp it down. So what you can do is just flatten out your cup with the back of a spoon, and right when you get down to near the end of your measure, just use the spoon to measure it, and then scoop some on top like that, and then just even it out again, kind of just to see. It's not critical because obviously, because you're using ground almonds, it won't be absolutely precise. So there's the 1 cup. Yeah, and there's the 1/2 cup. Come out pretty nice. And then next, your ground almonds. Now, it's always important when you're using ground nuts, smell them before you add them to your recipe, because if you miss checking the expiry date, or if the storage conditions were bad, if the oil in the nuts has gone rancid, it will smell terrible and will completely ruin your recipe if you add it before you check it. Okay, these ones smell clean and fresh, which is nice, and I did check the expiry before I bought it. And there's the other 1/2 cup. Close enough. And just get the pinch of salt in your hand. And if you waste a little bit, it doesn't really matter. Mix that up by hand. Until it looks even. You'll have noticed the ingredient list said 1 to 2 egg whites. The reason I say that is depending on the size of the eggs, how much white is in each egg, the ambient humidity in the room, the humidity of the ingredients, you may need more than 1, okay? So I would keep a spare 1. I'll check it halfway through, start with 1, and if that's not enough, you'll be able to tell halfway through if the paste becomes simply unworkable. So add the almond extract to the egg white right away. I've got a large spoon for this because I'm going to be using this sort of like a mortar and pestle. And when you're making an ointment, which this essentially is an ointment, you always start by adding the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients a small amount at a time. You never put the wet stuff on top of the dry stuff and try to mix it in. You're going to get huge chunks and lumps, and it's going to be a mess, and it won't come out. So what you do is you start with a small amount of the dry stuff and work it in. And yes, something like this is always far superior to be made by hand than in a machine, and it's more fun too, and it really doesn't take that long, because as you go along, there's a principle called geometric dilution, which means that once you got the first bits mixed in nicely, then what you do is you can keep adding more dry stuff as you go along. Instead of a spoon at a time, I can put in 2 spoons now. I think we're going to be okay with 1 egg white here, but I'll know in a minute. Yep. One more portion after this should do it. Yep, 1 will be just fine. I hope. This is where it gets tough right at the end. That's why you want a big spoon for this. Now, if you have a marble slab and an offset icing spatula, by all means, you can work it on that. I always try to do my recipes with the simplest utensils possible so that anybody can make them. This calls for a glove. I always keep a box of nitrile gloves around. These are safe for food service when you want to get your hands in, but you don't want to touch it. I usually don't mind touching the food, but considering this has got raw egg white, I was just going to get to the food safety part. That this, once it's prepared, should be refrigerated immediately or frozen. Okay, never leave this stuff out because you don't want raw egg whites unrefrigerated. Would you look at that, eh? See? Marzipan. And just to think you've been waiting only till Christmas, and then you get down to the store and they're sold out, and there goes your recipes. Well, just think, you can make this stuff anytime you want, all year round. So I'm just going to put this in a small bowl and tightly cover it and leave it in the fridge until my next recipe that I'm going to need this for. And if anybody was wondering just how much it made, it makes a little over a cup and around 350 grams, or about 12 ounces or 3/4 of a pound. Okay, so that's how you make marzipan. Thanks for watching, and I do hope to see you again.